Sony's new Summer Game Fest sale is live right now, and there are some really solid deals under $20. I went through everything, so you do not have to. Okay, I am starting with this one because it is the most insane deal on the entire list, and I need you to see it immediately. Control Ultimate Edition, 90% off for $4. Just $4. This is one of the most creative and mind-bending third-person action games ever made. You are a woman who just became director of a secret government agency investigating paranormal phenomena, and the whole building is alive and shifting around you. The gunplay is great, the world building is absolutely fascinating, and I have spent way too many hours just exploring every corner of this game. The Ultimate Edition includes all the dilk. Then we got Hitman World of Assassination, 60% off for $28. Now I know that is slightly over the $20 mark, but this one is just too good to leave out. This is the complete Hitman trilogy, all in one package, and the amount of content here is just staggering. Every mission is this giant sandbox where you can eliminate targets in dozens of creative ways. Honestly, one of the best value games you can buy at any price. Then we got Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, 75% off for $12.49. This game is genuinely one of a kind. You are a warrior in a medieval world building an army, fighting massive real-time battles with hundreds of soldiers, managing a kingdom, the whole thing. The good is that the scale and freedom are just incredible, and I have lost entire weekends to this game. The not so great is that it can feel a bit rough around the edges, and the learning curve is real. But $12 for this much game is just a fantastic deal. Then we got Dead Cells, 50% off for $12.49. This game used to be one of the most talked about roguelites out there, and honestly I think it still holds up really well. The combat is incredibly fluid, the movement feels amazing, and every run feels different. The amount of content they added over the years through updates is just wild. Then we got the Blasphemous and Blasphemous 2 bundle, 80% off for $9. Two Dark Souls inspired 2D platformers set in this brutal world, soaked in twisted religious imagery. The pixel art is stunning, the combat is tight and punishing, and the lore is genuinely fascinating if you dig into it. Blasphemous 2 improves on everything from the first game. Then we got Still Wakes the Deep Complete Collection, 60% off for $16. This is a first-person horror game set on a North Sea oil rig in the 1970s, and the atmosphere is just suffocating in the best way. Something goes terribly wrong on the rig, and you are just a regular worker trying to survive. The setting makes it feel completely unique from other horror games, and the complete collection includes all additional content. Then we got The Long Dark, 66% off for $11.89. This is a survival game set in the frozen Canadian wilderness after a geomagnetic disaster, and it is one of the most atmospheric survival games ever made. You are managing hunger, thirst, warmth, and fatigue, while wolves and blizzards are trying to kill you. The good is that the world feels genuinely hostile, and survival feels earned. The not so great is that it can feel slow if you are not into that kind of deliberate pacing. Then we got Maneater Apex Edition, 75% off for $12.49. This game is exactly what it sounds like. You are a shark. You eat people, you get bigger, you eat more people. It is absolutely ridiculous, and I mean that in the best way. The progression system where you upgrade your shark with different mutations is genuinely fun, and the whole thing is narrated like a nature documentary, which is hilarious. Then we got Chivalry 2, 80% off for $8. This game used to be absolutely massive when it came out, and honestly, I think it is still really fun. Massive medieval battles with up to 64 players swinging swords, throwing axes, and just causing complete insanity. The combat takes a bit to get used to, but once it clicks it is incredibly satisfying. The player base has definitely thinned out over the years, which is worth knowing, but $8 for this much chaotic medieval fun is still a great deal. Then we got Kerbal Space Program Enhanced Edition Complete, 75% off for $15. This is the most complete version of one of the most unique games ever made. You are building and launching rockets with these little green alien guys and trying to actually reach space and other planets. The physics simulation is genuinely impressive, and there is nothing more satisfying than finally getting a rocket into orbit after 100 failed attempts. The complete edition includes all the DLC scenarios, and $15 for all of that is a really great deal. Then we got PAYDAY 3, 50% off for $15. Look, this one had a really rough launch, and the player base took a hit because of it. But at $15, it is a different conversation. The heist gameplay is still really fun, the gunplay is solid, and if you can get a crew together, it is a genuinely enjoyable co-op experience. Then we got Smalland Survive the Wilds, 70% off for $10.49. This is a survival crafting game where you are a tiny human in a massive world where insects are the size of dinosaurs. The concept is really cool, building bases and crafting gear while riding giant beetles around. It is a bit rough in places, and the content can feel thin if you play it solo for long periods. Then we got Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged Legendary Edition, 85% off for $13.49. I've said it before, and I will say it again. This game is way more fun than it has any right to be. The track design is incredibly creative, the handling feels satisfying, and the Legendary Edition gives you a ton of extra cars and content. It is aimed more at younger players, and the difficulty is pretty gentle. Then we got Gas Station Simulator, 40% off for $13.19. This is one of those games that sounds like it should be boring, but somehow is not. You are buying a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere and slowly building it up, cleaning, repairing, restocking, serving customers. It is weirdly relaxing and satisfying. Then we got Robin Hood Sherwood Builders, 65% off for $10.49. This one takes the Robin Hood story and turns it into a city builder and RPG hybrid. You are building a settlement in Sherwood Forest for the poor while also doing missions and fighting the sheriff's forces. Then we got the Thaumaturge, 60% off for $14. A narrative RPG set in early 20th century Warsaw where you control supernatural beings called Salutors. The historical setting is genuinely unique in gaming, and the story is atmospheric and morally complex. The gameplay is slower and more dialogue focused, which is not for everyone, but worth checking out definitely. Then we got Core Keeper, 40% off for $12. This is a top-down survival crafting game where you are mining underground, building a base, farming, and fighting bosses. Think Terraria, but a bit more relaxed. The co-op is really solid, and the progression keeps pulling you forward. It is not the most original concept, but it executes really well, and $12 for this much content is decent value. Then we got FBC Firebreak, 40% off for $12. This is a co-op shooter set in the same universe as Control, which alone makes it interesting. You are working for the same Federal Bureau of Control we talked about earlier, dealing with paranormal threats and teams. The concept is great, and the world building is as rich as you would expect from Remedy. It is still building its player base, so finding matches can be inconsistent, but $12 for a Remedy game in the Control universe is worth taking a shot on. Then we got Undertale, 34% off for $9.89. Look, the discount is the smallest on this list, but this is Undertale, one of the most beloved indie games ever made, where you can complete the whole game without killing a single enemy if you want. The writing is brilliant, the characters are unforgettable, and the way it subverts your expectations is genuinely special. Then we got Dungeons of Hinterberg, 70% off for $6.89. This is a really charming action RPG set in an Austrian village where dungeons have mysteriously appeared in the mountains and tourists come to do them for fun. The combination of dungeon crawling and social sim is surprisingly great, and the whole vibe is really refreshing. Then we got Bluey The Videogame, 65% off for $14. If you have young kids who watch Bluey, this is basically a must-buy. The show has some of the best writing in children's television, and the game captures that energy really well. It is short and simple, but it is made for kids, and for $14, if it keeps little ones happy, it is absolutely worth it. Then we got Monster Energy Supercross 25, 75% off for $15. The official Supercross game with real riders, real tracks, and a really deep career mode. If you are into motocross at all, this is the most authentic simulation of the sport you can find on PlayStation, and $15 for the newest edition is a genuinely great deal. Then we got PlateUp, 70% off for $6. This is a co-op restaurant building game that mixes cooking mechanics with base building. You are not just cooking orders, you are designing your whole kitchen layout, automating processes, and optimizing everything. It is way deeper than it looks, and in co-op, it is really fun to plan and build together. Then we got Big Helmet Heroes, 50% off for $12.49. A co-op action brawler with a really fun art style where characters have these giant oversized helmets. The combat is satisfying, the co-op is the highlight, and for families or friends looking for something to play together, $12 is fair. Then we got Blair Witch, 80% off for $6. A first-person psychological horror game set in the Black Hills Forest based on the Blair Witch film. You have a dog companion named Bullet, which honestly is one of the best parts of the whole experience. The atmosphere is tense and unsettling, and for $6, it is a decent horror pickup, especially for fans of the film. Then we got INDIKA, 50% off for $12.49. This one is genuinely unlike anything else out there. You are a young nun in 19th century Russia being tormented by the devil, and the whole game is this surreal and darkly comedic examination of faith and doubt. The gameplay has some unexpected moments, and the tone is unlike any other game I can think of. It is weird and divisive and one-of-a-kind experience. Then we got Shredders, 40% off for $18. A snowboarding game with a really cool artistic style and a focus on freestyle tricks and self-expression rather than racing. The movement feels really satisfying once you get into it, and the world is fun to just shred around in. Then we got LEGO Voyagers, 30% off for $17.49. The newest LEGO game, and this one is focused on space exploration. You are traveling between planets, collecting LEGO sets, and building your way through the universe. The smallest discount on the list, and the newest release, so the price is still a bit higher, but for LEGO fans, especially younger players, it is a charming new entry in the series. Then we got Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, 90% off for $5. The biggest percentage discount alongside Control on this entire list. The platform fighter with SpongeBob, Rugrats, Danny Phantom, and the whole Nickelodeon lineup. It plays surprisingly well as a fighter, and for $5, if you grew up watching these shows, or you have kids who love them, it is just a no-brainer grab.